So I'm going to talk about how to design more ethically engaging experiences. And I always find it's always useful to find out a little bit about the presenter on these talks. So I guess where I'm coming from, and I guess where my viewpoint, and I guess where I'm coming from when I'm talking about this. So in my day job, I'm a UX designer at AstraZeneca, so the global kind of pharmaceutical company. And when I'm not doing that, I'm a wannabe UX Jedi with terrible Photoshop skills, as you can see there. And I'm also a keen cyclist, which isn't necessarily relevant here, but I'm also an identical twin. I'm on the right here, I think. I have no idea on this one which one I am, so I'm really an identical twin. And also, I am a bit of a Phil Spencer lookalike, I have been told. Unfortunately, there's not much demand for a Phil Spencer lookalike. I wish there were more, but there we go. I'm also a child of the 80s. Is anyone else a child of the 80s? Fantastic. In which case, I'm going to show a little video, and maybe some of this will bring those memories flooding back.
Whack-a-day, counting from his standards gate, shaking back, cracker-jack, who did shoot JR? Pac-Man, He-Man, take a set, Walkman, Buckaroo, Emu, Michael Knight's car. Goonies, Crankies, Filofax, and Yuppies, Lockerbie, you and me, John Lennon shot dead. Mr. Men, Mr. Ben, Angie Watts, Dirty Den, Swap Shop, Tiz was Charles and I getting wet. We didn't own an iPad, never heard of texting, only teletexting. We never owned an iPad, never used the sat-nav, only old AA maps.
I like the people walking in there going, what the hell is going on here? So that was not only an opportunity to kind of go back to some of the awesomeness of the 1980s, but I guess also a reflection that maybe it was slightly different times, and I guess this is a theme in terms of the march of the machines and the march of technology. This is me in the 1980s, and no technology here. In fact, even the watch is analog, so very little kind of digitally there. Fast forward 30 years or so. And this obviously isn't me. This is my kids. So I've got a son who will soon be 6 and a daughter who will be 3. And technology features in their lives pretty heavily. They're using an iPad here. Unbelievably, they're actually not squabbling about it here, which is pretty rare. But they've grown up with technology, and it plays a very fundamental part in their lives, and it plays a fundamental part in our lives as well. Is anyone else sort of parents? In which case, I wonder, have you experienced something like this?
No iPad.
iPad!
No iPad, Cammy.
iPad!
No iPad.
iPad!
No iPad, Cammy.
iPad!
No iPad.
So I love the fact that that's now an iPaddy. So there's a term for this kind of iPad-related paddy, and unfortunately, an all too frequent occurrence in our household. It's not just kids that are really embrace technology. I think as a whole, we love our technology, we love our devices. Certainly in the Western world, our laptops, our tablets, our smartphones. And we can't get enough of it. And I wonder, is this healthy? And I want to show just how much we love our technology. And I think I suspect a lot of you know the answer to this, but let's do a quick show of hands. So I think in 2015, so it might have changed ever so slightly since then. So a team in the University of Loughborough, they had people install an app on their mobile phone which looked and detected how often they were using their phone, how often they were sort of engaging with it, I guess. So how many times, on average in a day, do you think people were using their mobile phones? If you think it's between 0 and 25, put your hand up. 26 and 50. Any takers? No? 51, 75. So we've got one taker. Some. 76 and 100. Oh, you're all too good for me. So the actual figure that they found was a whopping 85 times. That's 85 times a day people are, looking at their phone or doing something in their phone, kind of engaging with that technology. And I wonder, is this level of engagement healthy? Is this good for us? There was a recent study, and I'd probably take this with a significant pinch of salt. But there's a study in America where they asked people, if you had to give up sex or your mobile, which would you rather do? And I think about a third of Americans would rather give up their mobile than sex. Now, maybe that says as much about their sex life as how much they love their mobiles. But it's starting to show that just how much we love our technology. And we're starting to see the impact that it's having, in our interactions with other people, in the way that we live our lives. We see people going out and they're just on their mobiles. The smartphone walk, shuffling down the road, or going out for a meal with your friends and everyone's there on their phone. Or a couple going out to the restaurant and they're just on the phone the whole time. Obviously it's not just sort of women or younger girls, with this, or out at the park. Incidentally, so next two photos, can you spot the one person that's not on a phone? Hands up if you've spotted them. Okay, so we've got this guy. This one, I've made it a bit easier on this one. Hands up, first guy that's not on their phone. Oh. So, see the one guy reading his newspaper. So, we're becoming really, really almost, over-engaged, I would say, with our technology. And I wonder, is this where we're going? Now, fortunately, we don't have fire hydrants in the UK, so that's probably going to be slightly less of an issue on that one. But is this our future? Is this our smartphone, technology-obsessed zombies, where we all we ever do is interact through our mobiles and through our digital devices, and there's a great website that I'd heartily recommend you taking a look at called Network Effect. So it's from two sort of artists, I guess, sort of technologists and artists, called Jonathan Harris and Greg, I'm not even going to, Hochmach, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but anyway. So, and I agree with this so much. It says, the internet is a miraculous tool, but all too often it affects us like a drug. Many of its popular apps, news websites, and social networks have been carefully designed to addict and distract so they can harvest human attention like the natural resource it is. And I think that's true. I think, there's a certain amount of real truth to this. We are seeing websites, and we're seeing apps and services that are designed, to kind of harvest this attention, designed to keep us coming back and back and back. And in fact, they've done studies looking at the sort of brain imaging of people using the internet, using technology, and it's remarkably similar to someone that's using addictive drugs. In terms of the dopamine that's released and the sort of signals that are sent in the brain. It's almost like technology is becoming the drug of the 21st century. And I think we're starting to see some of the consequences of that. And okay, so for example, a recent study has found that children nowadays are the unfittest that children have ever been. So if you were to run a race of a Victorian child with a modern day child, the Victorian child is going to win. And okay, there's a lot of reasons for that in terms of maybe overuse of cars and transport and the way we live our lives. But there's no doubt that technology and the sedentary nature of technology and our sort of engagement with technology is helping to drive that. And not just and things like another study found that 45% I think of teenagers have admitted to heavily using their mobile after going to bed. So it's affecting people's kind of sleep patterns as well. It's really affecting the way they live their lives. In fact, I saw this. I was getting a train up to Liverpool a little while ago, and I saw this sign, and it got me thinking. Well, even something like Pokemon Go, has this great effect in terms of getting people out and about. But again, if they're having to say, remember to stop, look, and listen when approaching the railway, are we seeing people again? They're so engaged, they're not really aware of the dangers around them, this can be really dangerous stuff. So for example, 31% of motorists have admitted to using their mobile sort of behind the wheel. So our sort of almost over-engagement with technology, not only is it unhealthy, it can be downright dangerous. And in fact, taken to the extreme, we get people dying from exhaustion because they're playing video games just for days and days on end. So I think our sort of levels of engagement with technology it's getting to the level now where is this healthy for us as a society? Is it healthy for us as individuals? And with anything like this, people like to kind of point a finger and say, okay, who's to blame for this? Whose fault is it that these kids are not getting out and playing like they should do, or that people are using their mobiles much more than we think is healthy? And you might say, well, it's the companies, it's the Apples, the Microsofts of the world. They're creating these products which are just which are designed to be almost addictive, to drive this engagement. Or we're weak. We should be stronger as kind of people ourselves. But I wonder if, come on, clicker. But I wonder if we need to look at ourselves a little bit as well, as UX professionals, as UX designers. Are we to blame for some of this? Maybe blame's too strong a word, but are we contributing to this a little bit? Because if you consider, there's no one definition of user experience design, but if you look at a lot of definitions, they'll read probably something pretty similar like this. So the goal of user experience design is to improve customer satisfaction and loyalty through the utility, ease of use, and pleasure provided in the interaction with a product. And it says there that the pleasure provided. So if you're making products and services that are very pleasurable, they're going to drive engagement. They're going to drive that sort of habitual, almost addictive behaviour. And if you, and again, looking at the kind of the three almost tenets of user experience and good UX, make it useful, make it something that people have a use for, make it usable so that people can actually use it. But then make it desirable, make it pleasurable to use. And arguably, it's this kind of top of the mountain, the UX mountain almost, which is becoming more and more important. And as the people's expectations and almost the kind of the bar is being raised. This is where the Apples of the world, the Googles of the world. Let's create these beautiful, these really engaging, really pleasurable, desirable products. And I think, in fact, this came up in the question in the last talk. So we're getting almost specialisms and looking at, okay, how can we build habit-forming products? How can we create products and services, which almost become, almost kind of addictive? and I think we need to kind of start taking a step back and looking actually, should we be designing this kind of level of engagement? Should we be, dare I say, designing a more kind of ethical engagement, something which, yes, it's engaging, yes, it's nice to use, it's pleasurable to use, but it's not, it's not driving the kind of behaviour that maybe we don't want to see. So I'm gonna run through sort of 7 tenets to designing more ethical engagement, and I've recycled, in this day and age, I've recycled Ed's stone. He obviously doesn't need it anymore, so I've dug it up from the ground, and I'm using his infamous Ed stone. So I'm gonna go through the 7 tenets now, and the first one. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about sort of KPIs, and I think KPIs is becoming increasingly important in the world of UX. In terms of kind of showing the return of investment on UX, or the importance of creating very well designed products and services. And in fact, if you look at a lot of kind of KPI frameworks, so for example, take Google's HEART framework. So HEART standing for happiness, engagement, adoption, retention, and task success. So they have a whole sort of engagement section. So in terms of the importance of looking at and measuring and tracking engagement. So things like number of visits per user per week, so number of photos uploaded per user per day, and number of shares. But the thing is, are we, when we focus so much on engagement, are we looking at the right thing? Are we looking at the behaviour when really we should be focusing on the outcomes? We should be focusing on not the number of visits per week, but the number of if it's an e-commerce site, the number of orders, the number of registrations, the number, we shouldn't just be driving people to use a product or service. We should be looking at the bigger picture, the outcomes, and even the outcomes that are desirable and are beneficial for that set of users. So I think firstly we should be looking at sort of outcomes over engagement. So rather than number of visits, we should be looking at the bigger outcomes, so things like sort of number of orders or number of sort of account upgrades, and I guess in terms of kind of UX KPIs, but arguably in terms of the bigger kind of business goals and outcomes that we're looking to drive. So I think we should be a little bit less sort of obsessed with kind of engagement KPIs and really tracking and chasing those KPIs. And the second thing I think we should be mindful of is I had the example there of the Hooked book. And there's a lot of sort of work around kind of persuasive design and using persuasive design. You think of things like Booking.com or a lot of e-commerce sites where they're really using this almost kind of design techniques to get people to do things without them almost even realizing. So whether that's the way that they show prices, the way that they show availability, or how often things have been bought and that sort of stuff. And we're often, as human beings, I guess, we can be sort of easily persuaded and easily, we can be susceptible to a lot of these things. And whether that's the scourge of clickbait, 17 final photos taken before tragedy struck. Tell me you can't resist clicking on some of those. Come on. You're like, there we go. Got to click on it and see what those 17 photos are. Or using things like sort of gamification again to utilise some of these kind of the ways to draw people in and sort of keep them engaged. And I think that again we need to be a bit more I guess sort of ethical about how these kind of techniques are used. Not sort of abusing these kind of persuasion design techniques, and almost being there sort of on behalf of the customer, on behalf of the user, in terms of sort of advocating sort of ethical use of these things, and really kind of standing up in that regard. So another thing I want to talk about is notifications and the proliferation of notifications. So this is for example, some of the notifications I get on my phone on a regular basis. You know, an app has updated, something has been published, I've got an email, and and I want to talk a little bit about LinkedIn as when it comes to notifications. So, who here uses LinkedIn? Sort of hands up. Oh, fantastic! So you all pretty much know what I'm talking about. So, so LinkedIn will regularly send me notifications, either emails or app notifications. So, for example, one of your connections is celebrating a work anniversary. Well, okay, kind of thank you, LinkedIn. That's kind of semi-interesting. You know, I might want to reconnect with David or say, hey, well done, David, you got 4 years. So that's an example of the sort of notification I get from LinkedIn. Oh, one of your connections is celebrating a birthday. Oh, okay. You know, don't forget LinkedIn. You know, you're not Facebook LinkedIn. You know, I have a hierarchy. If I'm friends with someone, I might add them to Facebook. If I'm not friends with someone and I still want to keep in touch, I maybe add them to LinkedIn. Do you really need to tell me that one of my connections is celebrating their birthday? And then you get things like one of your connections has updated their profile photo. Do I really need to know that one of my connections has updated their profile photo? Is this important information? You know, the 20 to 30 seconds you've just wasted of my time, kind of keep it, notifying me of this. You know, thank you very much, LinkedIn. You've really added value to my life. So, so I think we've got to kind of try and almost kind of reduce the sheer over notification that is proliferating, when it comes to emails and apps and things. So, and I think we just need to ask this very simple question. Does the user really need to know this? And yes, it's going to add value. Fine, give them a notification. If it doesn't, don't bother them. Please don't waste my time telling me something, because that's again, it's just feeding that over. Okay, my phone just beeped. Oh, have a look at that. Oh, okay, yeah, it's not really something I needed to know. And kind of related to that, not just in terms of kind of receiving notifications, but in terms of being able to kind of control and look at. Okay, what's so right? Okay, I want to go to Facebook and say, well, those notifications you've been sending me, actually, I'm not really interested in these. So I want to change the settings. So this is Facebook on a mobile for a few weeks ago. Check out the size of that spider. Obviously, must have been very memorable. I took a photo from it 3 years ago. So I want to go to Facebook and change my settings. So maybe I click on the profile at the top. Okay, so let's view your profile. So not really clear here where I need to go. So let's look at the old dumping ground of options that can't find a home anywhere. So let's go to more. View privacy shortcuts. Again, maybe more. And then slightly down, so nearly at the bottom, we've got notifications. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps within Facebook to get to those notification settings. And I'm sure there's maybe an easier way to get to them. I couldn't find it when I was looking at it sort of earlier. So I think it's really important that not just in terms of kind of reducing those number of notifications, but in terms of letting users really have control. Give them that control over, and not just in terms of the notifications that are being received, but in terms of a clear path for changing them. So in terms of, okay, how do I change these notifications? If I get an email, how do I change these kind of emails? I have another question for you. This is more of a hypothetical question. I don't want you to, so you can think of it in your head, but you don't have to kind of shout it out. So I want you to think, what is the best type of interface? Is it the Minority Report? I was trying to remember the film there. Where you require the upper body strength of an Olympic gymnast to be able to use an interface for a little time, or touch screen or what have you. So have about think of that. So what's the best type of interface? Well, I think really it's no interface at all. And actually, the the previous talk, David, I can't remember his surname. So great example of this, contactless payment. So whereas previously you'd have to get your card out, put it into the machine, wait for it to make a connection, type in your number, payment goes. Now, okay, contactless, bing, payment's gone. So by reducing the interface, you're making it not just adding value and a better service, but you're not getting in the way. And this is a great quote from Don Norman, one of the forefathers of UX. In fact, I think he even coined the phrase UX when he was working at Apple. So he says the real problem with the interface is that it is an interface. Interfaces get in the way. I don't want to focus my energies on an interface. I want to focus on the job. I don't want to think of myself as using a computer. I want to think of myself as doing my job. So, and by removing that kind of barrier, removing those interfaces, you're by doing that, you're reducing that need to engage and that sort of over, or even the time it takes in terms of doing something, with a digital sort of product or service. So there's a great book from a guy called Golden Krishna called The Best Interface is No Interface, which I heartily recommend you read if you're interested in this sort of thing. It's not a big book, but it's well worth a read. And he talks about 3 kind of key principles around keeping the interface to a minimum. So and actually, interestingly, these some of these themes have kind of come up already in kind of today. So around kind of embracing typical processes instead of screens. So rather than sort of forcing people to go through almost a computer process or using an interface. Think about the human process, the way that we naturally do something, and in terms of leveraging computers instead of serving them. So in terms of having computers that adapt to us and adapt to the way that we like to do something or want to do something, rather than forcing us to almost adapt to the computer. And then again, a really common theme around kind of adapting to individuals, so having a very personalized kind of service. So again, I think that's where, by having sort of interactions which are much more relevant and much more useful, again, you can kind of reduce the noise and reduce the need to constantly, be engaging and looking and sort of checking stuff. And I think we're starting to see this certainly with some of the things like sort of Cortina and Siri and some of the other kind of more personalized sort of services. And I think something that so I kind of talked there a little bit about the definition of kind of UX, and I guess before UX became the big term, sort of usability, I guess, was kind of a bit of a blanket term for sort of HCI and some things around HCI. And I think that in kind of we've kind of moved on a little bit from just thinking about usability. But I think in doing so, maybe we've lost some of the essence of usability as well. I kind of, it was there as one of the real foundations of good UX design. And this is one of the ISO how they define usability. So the extent to which a product can be used by specified users to achieve specified goals with effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction in a specified context of use. And I've sort of calling out efficiency because I think this is something which is in a sort of drive to create more pleasurable and more desirable and often more sticky. So I hate this phrase. We'll be asked kind of by business stakeholders and clients. It's got to be sticky. This app's got to be sticky. This website's got to be sticky. We've got to keep people on there. We've got to keep them coming back. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of, quite naturally, of IKEA. Everyone loves IKEA, I'm sure. You all know IKEA. There's a big IKEA in Milton Keynes that we go to, probably, I guess once a quarter, because that's about as much as I can tolerate. Because this is my experience of IKEA. So you get in, invariably what you need is here, although even if you know where it is, it might be anywhere in here. And then you've got an assault course. You're going all the way through. And then at the end, if you're lucky, you might get to the end, and it's probably out of stock anyway. And it can be a harrowing experience. I don't know if this has actually happened, but I think I've come back from IKEA a slightly broken man on many occasions, and vowing I'm never going to go back to IKEA, and then but they're so cheap, and the stuff they do is actually pretty good. But we do this with we do this with digital products and services. We force people to go through these hoops and go through this kind of assault course to get where they want to do. And I think we've kind of lost. We need to kind of come back to thinking about, okay, how can we make this efficient? How can we let people do what they want to do and then move on with something better, something more enriching for their life. Let them kind of live their life rather than putting all these roadblocks in the way. So, I think we need to go back to kind of focusing on looking at making these kind of tasks efficient, and not just throwing mud at people, in the hope that some of it will stick. And again, because I don't think it's really I don't think from a UX perspective it's really where we want to be, what we want to be doing. We want to again kind of be sort of flying the flag for the user, saying, look, we shouldn't be doing this. My last question for you, and this is again, you can answer it in your head. If you want to shout out, that's mine. So yeah, that's fine. So and I think again, this is a theme that I think has kind of come up today around kind of human behaviour, social change. So how do you change human behaviour? How do you change society and how we live our lives and how people do things? Well, so this is Melinda Gates, so wife of Bill, and according to Melinda Gates, and I think according to a lot of other people, one of, if not the best way to drive social change is through design. Is through the design of the things that people use, the design of the transport they use, the homes they live in. Because ultimately, pretty much everything we use has been designed, whether it's a physical product or a digital service, and that makes designers, pretty influential people, and that makes the design community, pretty influential, because we have the power to change people's behaviour, to change kind of society. And as Winston Churchill sort of said very sort of famously in 1906, where there's great power, there is great responsibility. And I'm sure you're thinking, I've heard this before somewhere. So, Winston Churchill knew this. Obviously, Spider-Man knew this. And sure as hell this guy knows this. With great power comes great responsibility. And I think it's something that, we need to consider as well, within the kind of the UX community and within the kind of the design community. Because I think, we do have, with the I guess the power we have to influence and to influence the design of products and services, we can help influence this change of human behaviour and this change within society. And I think that in doing so, we need to think about making the ethics of and say driving for more sort of ethical engagement. And that brings me to kind of my last sort of tenet, which I'm going to sort of, I guess, use kind of Google's famous "Don't be evil," which unfortunately I don't think they follow themselves. It's like they're not eating their own dog food. So don't do what Google say, but at least do what they say they do. So I think incidentally, now that they're not, they've changed it now to do the right thing. So it's not "Don't be evil," but I think "Don't be evil" is nicer. So this is what they said. So don't be evil. I believe strongly that in the long term, you'll be better served by doing good things for the world, even if you forgo some short-term gains by doing so. And I think that's so true. I think we need to kind of use the potential we have to kind of influence digital products and services and to design for ethical engagement and design for the kind of engagement rather than making people kind of jump through hoops or habitually checking their phones. This is the kind of engagement that I think we should be designing for. So in very quick summary, so my 7 kind of tenets for designing more ethical engagement. So look for outcomes over when it comes to KPIs, look for outcomes over engagement. Don't abuse persuasion techniques. Notify only when necessary. Provide control. Keep the interface to a minimum. Reduce friction. And most importantly, don't be evil. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Neil. OK, so we've got about 5-10 minutes or so until our final keynote. So we've got a couple of minutes. If anyone has any questions for Neil, let's take them now. Yeah, down the front there.
Hi, Neil. Thank you for the talk. It was really good.
That's right.
Okay, so my question is, what advice do you have for people who are in a situation that doesn't encourage or foster this kind of ethical work? Like you mentioned yourself, sometimes you came across business stakeholders who were like, let's make it sticky.
Yep.
And that made you go,
So I think a really good way to do that is to use, I guess, the power of storytelling sometimes. So you can, because you can almost kind of help them see with their own eyes. If you've got real stories of customers, and you can kind of make them see, well, actually, yeah, maybe in the short term, this is good in terms of getting our KPIs. But actually, if you think about, longer term around, customer satisfaction, around retention, around kind of the way that someone perceives a brand. I think that can be really powerful because KPIs, I guess, numbers and figures, they can be quite cold. But if you give it almost that human element, and because it's often it's about emotion that you're trying to convey, and you want to kind of almost get people to see the dangers and the risks of, I guess, taking of abusing some of the less ethical practices, shall we say. And also, you can look at things like I think Ryanair is a great case study of a company that have actually said, well, we're going to move away from doing some of the using dark patterns and using the power of design maybe for not the best means. So you can say, well, look, other companies have done this stuff. They've kind of moved on from this.
thank you.
Great. Yep. One more question.
Sorry, I've lost my voice. Does taking an ethical stance increase your market share, or is it a challenge to commercial success?
I think potentially a bit of both, I guess. I think
so you need to make the business case, don't you?
I think
you know what I mean, as well as the ethical case.
I think yes. I think if it's just the ethical case, you're never going to get off the ground. I think you've got to have the business case, but I think equally, and I guess that's where Google's quite an interesting example, because in a sense, they're saying, well, at our core, we fundamentally believe that we should be an ethical company, but then you look at some of their practices in terms of avoiding tax and in terms of you say, well, is that ethical behaviour? So, but I think yeah, you kind of need a bit of both, really.
I booked with Ryanair yesterday, and they tried to squeeze everything they could out of me. So I don't think they've changed their practices quite yet.
Well, I guess they've come from from down here to maybe, but yes, I think and I think that's partly indicative of kind of travel industry in general. But yeah.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Let's give Neil one last round of applause.